Hey guys, how's it going? James here, and today I'm in this corner now. I normally like to be in that corner over there, but Kohdok is temporarily taking that spot. He wanted that corner. I tried to talk to him about it, but he was like, dude, I've already recorded the video, it's out. There's nothing I can do about it, so I'm over in this corner instead. Kohdok here. For people who haven't heard of him, he's quite famous for doing the seven deadly sins. I was looking through them all, and it's so hard to add extra things to the seven deadly sins. So I was like, oh, what can I do? Because it would be really good just to show off Kohdok, show you like his level of knowledge. So I found a shorter video. It's a balanced discussion of balance, which is a nice way of phrasing it. So we're talking about card games and balancing, and he says some things about because he's kind of left it up in the air. So I feel like we can debate this more because it is about feelings rather than facts. And I think a lot of time he does get quite factual, so there's not much more I can add to it. So without further ado, let's react to this video.
And this is going to be a bit of a short one this time because if there's any subject that I've been asked to cover a lot, it's the concept of balancing your game. And I hate to say it, I don't really think it's possible. I mean, what benefit is a video about resource cards to a game that uses an action point system?
So you can see right from the get-go, he's quite conflicted with this video, and that's what really drew me in, because I was thinking, well, if it's not possible, how do you have the video? You know?
How helpful is a video about card advantage to a game where you fully redraw your hand every turn? What use is a video about life points to a game that uses victory points? That's kind of what I've been trying to avoid in these videos.
So yeah, he makes a good point, because there's so many different variations. It can be hard to actually describe some of these. Like in my talk TCGs, a lot of times I think I have to mention going, if you use this style in your TCG, then this could work. But if you use this style, this could work. You know, it's not a one size fits all situation. And with card balancing, I think it's like the age-old question as well. Like, how do you balance a game? You know, it's something a lot of people are intrigued by. So let's just get a bit further in, because
too much about specific mechanics on their own, as opposed to examples of wider concepts. I worry that I might inadvertently pigeonhole somebody's game idea because I think I'm telling them they're doing things the wrong way. I mean, my series is called The Seven Deadly Sins. That kinda comes with the territory. Now, I did single out a couple of designs, life decking and board gaming. Life decking because it's an anti-fun feature that wastes cards and got solved by the shield system ages ago, and board gaming because using cards as pawns, especially when tokens and other cards are involved, is a frustrating experience in person.
So yes, so he's done a previous Seven Deadly Sins where he talks about life decking. I think that was great because it was something very early on in Shard TCG where I had contemplated life decking myself, and it was Richard had something to say about it because he didn't quite agree with it, but also Kohdok helped me in that situation, because I just thought, well, that's great because now it's there. You don't have to write anything down. Life decking is the way to go, you know. But he used the Harry Potter TCG as an example. It uses life decking. Anyway, if you haven't checked it out, I would check it out. It's definitely worthwhile. Also, if you want to watch this original video as well, go down into the description below. There is a link for Kohdok's video right there just for you.
Free to check the various Sin videos themselves to see the perils of these mechanics. Otherwise, I don't want to make it feel like anything is off limits, or that you have to ascribe to how other games do things aside from, like, clear formatting and ease of play features. Because balance is an incredibly relative topic. I've played good games that have stable progression, and I've played good games that are really swingy. So the idea of game balance is basically impossible to speak about objectively.
The whole idea of, like, it's how you want to build your game. It's, do you want to go with the steady progression, the escalating into the game? It's something I addressed in my other video, the how, like, making your TCG fun, and it has like the chart of like how the game momentum should go. But then naturally you do have like lulls in the game, which is something he's talking about here if we go back a little bit.
Relative topic. I've played good games that have stable progression, and I've played good games that are really swingy.
So I think a good example of stable progression would probably be like Magic the Gathering, because it would be like Hearthstone, because you have that natural generation of mana where you'll get 1 mana on your first turn, 2 mana, then 3, and then 4, then 5, then 6, and that has like a nice stable progression. Where swingy ones probably is more like Magic the Gathering, because you could be flooded with mana and then suddenly have none for the rest of your turn. You think you've had a great start, and then your opponent's catching up because they're managing to get like a nice steady progression of mana, but you had that initial oomph because you had all the mana. And it's just 2 examples there. I'm sure people can think of many, many more. If you can, put them in the comment section below. We'll read through them. We'll learn from each other. It's always worthwhile.
Of game balance is basically impossible to speak about objectively. For an example of how crazy this can get, let's take a look at just one ludicrously simple card effect. Draw 2 cards. You play the card, its sole effect is you draw 2 more cards, and you keep going. Now, all of the members of the big 3 have a card with this effect, so the real question is, how powerful is it? Starting with Magic the Gathering, the ability to draw 2 cards is a fairly middle-of-the-road effect valued at a mere 3 mana, the definition of average. In fact, Magic has a lot of cards that are known as cycle cards that have the effect of drawing a replacement card as part of their effect. In Pokemon, this card is hideously weak. In a game with as many hand refills and deck searches as Pokemon has, a card that merely lets you draw 2 is absolutely pathetic, to the point that its upgraded version that lets you draw 3 is still considered one of the game's weakest cards. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, this card is more powerful and feared than Blue Eyes White Dragon, hence its permanent home on the ban list. These days you have to bend over backwards, shift to the very earth, and forge a dark bargain with a foul spirit in order to get an effect as seemingly benign as drawing 2 cards!
So yes, he makes a very good point, but the main reason why it's so powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is because they have a resourceless system, if that makes sense. So obviously in Magic the Gathering you've got land, in Pokemon you've got energy, in Yu-Gi-Oh! You have your cards. So the whole idea of a card that can generate 2 cards is so powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because if you think about it, in Yu-Gi-Oh! The way to progress your creatures further is by actually sacrificing them to play others. So if you can get more draw power to get more options, then you can progress faster. So in a way, the pot of greed is banned because of that kind of power. The power of Yu-Gi-Oh! The resource in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is your cards. Your card draw is more powerful than anything else. Life tapping, you would spend life willy-nilly to gain more cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's the main factor to why it is so powerful in that compared to the other 2.
This is what I mean when I say that talking about balance objectively is basically impossible. It's why, when talking about mechanics, I prefer to go on a case-by-case basis, looking at games individually and seeing how the mechanics come together in each one. As for general advice, it's the same kind of advice you get for any kind of creative endeavor that has a competitive element. Test your cards and mechanics often, surround yourself with people who will give you honest feedback, and make sure that you occasionally reach outside of your group, getting somebody who's not involved in the testing to try out your game to make sure that it's easy for new players to understand. Otherwise, if your game requires dedicated resource cards that get shuffled into the main deck, maybe increase draw power a bit to keep games from dragging? That's about it. On the other hand, some things that seem like obvious advice might not be. For example, the idea that you should not give cards numerical advantages, like a card with the same costs but better stats and abilities. This seems like obvious advice, but that very imbalance might be a factor in the game's design. See also Grizzly Bears, a card which was slightly above curve on purpose to emphasize green's creature dominance. And on the subject of Grizzly Bears, advice on power creep can also sometimes be suspect. If a type of card in your game is just not getting used at all, maybe bumping the power curve a bit is needed to bring them back online. This was the case with creatures for a long time in Magic. It was a joke in the Magic community for the longest time that creatures were actually the worst cards in the game until they got their fairly recent power bump. I remember a time when a 10/10 for 5 mana with no downsides was unthinkable. Instead, you got a 10/10 for 7 mana that died in 2 turns and you liked it. Magic cards have also gone the other way, with certain cards getting newer versions that cost more or do less while the original versions are allowed to rotate out through set rotation. Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon have done the same thing with designs like retrains and supporter conversions. So it turns out keeping your card game balanced can be a balancing act.
Oh god, that pun. I always think of like the best example in Yu-Gi-Oh is when Dark Magician first came out. So like you had Dark Magician right at the start, and it cost 2 sacrifices to bring it out, and it's got 2,500 attack points. But for 1 sacrifice, you could bring out a Summon Skull, which has 2,500 attack points. So the Dark Magician was actually very, very weak by comparison. It was very underpowered. But over time, they started bringing out so many support cards that went around the Dark Magician that I think, I'm not too up to date with Yu-Gi-Oh, but I think even today that the Dark Magician deck is somewhat viable, you know, just to even use, even in a casual setting, I suppose. Where, you know, where there's plenty of other decks that would get absolutely destroyed for a card being that old. But just with it having the name Dark Magician and having a load of support cards around it, it is able to be rebalanced into like a viable set today, and that's with power creep. So even when you're looking at balancing your cards, if you've got like a first set and you go with a stronger set, don't be afraid to tie in stronger cards to those older cards to help drag them up a little bit. Offering your older cards that kind of love and support is another way of balancing, rather than just looking at your one set and having to rebalance. You can correct the mistakes of your past.
And that's really all I can say on balance. There's really no way of knowing how a given mechanic or piece of design collides with other pieces of design until it happens. So, for the future, I will probably be sticking to examining things on a case-by-case basis, unless I notice a common thread across a number of games. I'd rather stick to design language that matters to the most number of games possible, because I want to see more unique ideas that maybe don't subscribe to the most common design tropes. And speaking of subscribe...
Speaking of subscribe to me. You know, Kohdok, he's got 55.7 thousand subscribers. I think I should get just a couple of subscribers. But that's if you're feeling generous today. You know, you are in charge of your own life. If you want to make the choice and subscribe to Shard TCG, subscribe to watch my Talk TCGs, my TCG R&Ds, and some of my Shard TCG contents where I've been taking a look at like top 10 effects and top 10 like arts and things like that, then hit the subscribe button, because I do plenty of those. Okay, thank you very much everybody who's been watching this video today. Wait, Kohdok's not in the corner anymore. I can be back over here. Hang on, there we go. Make myself big. Oh, where'd I go? Bye. Right, so thank you very much. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.